Hey there, I'm Gab Lavoie. In a recent video, I briefly referenced the Gregorian chant Haec Dies, talking about the fact that it was monophonic. And this means that there's only one note that's played or sung at a time. So there's no harmonies and there's no chords in monophonic music. And this got me thinking, when did the monks who would have sung these Gregorian chants, when did they actually go around to developing harmony and polyphony? And what did that look like? So in a moment, we'll look again at Haec Dies. And once again, this is a Gregorian chant, and one of the earliest examples of notated music in the Western musical tradition. Now, it's also important to realize that music evolved a little bit differently in the West than in other cultures. So many other cultures tended to have a very rich oral musical tradition, but in the Western musical tradition, especially in Europe, it tended to evolve alongside a system of written notation. So music and the notation are kind of tied together, and a lot of our knowledge about the two are kind of limited to the kinds of records that we have and what kind of notated music we have still around these days. With that all said, Gregorian chant is also a type of plaint chant, and that's simply the kind of music that you would hear performed in the context of a religious service. And specifically, Gregorian chant was the music for the Roman Catholic Church. Now, let's go back to Haec Dies. As characteristic of Gregorian chants and plaint chants in general, the melody has an unmeasured rhythm, it mostly moves in steps, and it is indeed monophonic. Again, that means just one note at a time. Attempting to find precise dates for when this and other Gregorian chants were composed is a pretty murky endeavor, unfortunately. We don't really have very precise or very good records from that period. But what we do know is that there did exist a significant body of plaint chant material by the reign of Pope Gregory I. He actually helped to codify and organize a lot of these chants, and that's why we name these chants after him, Gregorian chants. So Pope Gregory was pope from the years 590 to 604. So it's pretty safe to say that most plaint chants probably existed before the year 600. The first notated instance of harmony and polyphony in the Western musical tradition comes with the type of music that we call organum. Organum developed by using a pre-existing Gregorian chant, such as Haec Dies, as what we call a cantus firmus, basically just a skeleton upon which further melodic lines were added. The earliest kinds of organum are what we call parallel organum, where the harmony, usually at an interval of a fourth or a fifth above the original melody, follow the melody in parallel motion. So, for example, if we had a melody that went like this, a parallel organum version of that, where the harmony is a fifth above the melody, would go like this. Now, eventually organum did get more complicated than these simple harmonies, such as in this example, but parallel organum was the earliest example of notated polyphony. The earliest written compilation of any organum and polyphony comes from the Musica Increadis, or the Music Handbook. And those excerpts of organum that I showed earlier are actually from that book. And the book itself dates from about the 9th century, or the year 800. Now, remember that some of the earliest Gregorian chants come from about the year 600, or even before that. The interesting thing for me then is that it seems to have taken musicians in the Western tradition roughly 200 years to come up with the concept of harmony, at least if we go by the notated account. I have a really hard time wrapping my head around this, because as a musician in the present day and age, harmony seems like a really simple concept. Like, you literally just play one note and then add another one on top like this. It doesn't seem that complicated. Some of my sources even do suggest that it did take a long time for harmony to develop. Monks would have experimented and eventually developed harmony by singing these chants over months, years, and generations. So the central question I want to explore in this video then is, why did it take seemingly so long for these monks to innovate harmony? especially when today musical innovation seems to be happening at just such a rapid pace. Among some factors, I think we can take a look at the account of different types of social solidarity by the sociologist Emile Durkheim to help answer this question. But before we go there, let's take a deeper look at the term innovation. Coming up with new ideas, or the process of innovation, can happen in a few different ways. Maybe you'll come up with a new idea yourself after like a period of deep reflection, or maybe you'll get inspired while doing some menial chore. But another really important source of innovation comes from chance encounters between diverse individuals. And this is exactly what it sounds like. People with different backgrounds and different ideas happen to bump into each other, maybe while getting coffee, or they're both catching the same indie band playing a show, and they get talking, they come up with new ideas. So now we need to have a cursory look at how monks lived. Typically, the idea when you become a monk is that you separate yourself from mainstream society. Very often, you might go live in a monastery and basically devote yourself to religious service. In this case, the Roman Catholic Church. And if you do live with other monks at this monastery, you're probably going to all live pretty similar lives. Now, I'm certainly no expert on monasticism, but I feel like that's a pretty fair statement to make. Suffice it to say, though, that you're probably not going to have very much interaction with outsiders, if at all. This is where I'd now like to talk about Emile Durkheim. He was one of the very first sociologists, and one of the topics that most interested him was to determine what exactly it was that held societies together. What keeps a loose collection of individuals sticking together? In other words, Durkheim wanted to examine social solidarity, and importantly for him, the type of solidarity present in a society would greatly depend on its division of labor. The monastic life that we've just described would probably experience what Durkheim calls mechanical solidarity. This is a type of solidarity characterized by feelings of likeness. Basically, people feel together because they all think and do the same things. And Durkheim says that this kind of solidarity often exists in more traditional communities. For example, we might take a farming family. In these kinds of communities, all members of the family or the community are needed for all the tasks related to the farming process. So in terms of their labor, they actually have to be generalists. They don't specialize in anything. And so because they all essentially do and think the same things, Durkheim would say that they experience a type of social solidarity that we call mechanical solidarity. Mechanical solidarity is contrasted with what we call organic solidarity. So with the coming of the Industrial Revolution, the population in cities grew exponentially, and labor became increasingly specialized. And so it wasn't really possible for such societies to keep experiencing mechanical solidarity, because people just weren't the same anymore. But Durkheim says that such communities can still experience what we call organic solidarity, and this is a kind of solidarity that rests on feelings of interdependence, in which everyone basically kind of plays their own little part in the greater whole of the society. For example, if I'm a professional musician, I specialize in performing music and providing entertainment in exchange for money. And then I can then use that money to go and satisfy my basic needs like food, water, shelter, and some other things too. But I can't actually grow my own food from the ground up because I don't specialize in that. Instead, I depend on others who do specialize in that to sell me their food that they've grown and distributed from the ground up. And this is the sort of interdependence that Durkheim says exists in organic solidarity. So what could all this possibly have to do with monks trying to develop harmonies? Well, let's go back to what we said about innovation. It is extremely facilitated by chance encounters or meetings between different or diverse people. If we do accept the idea that monastic society probably exhibited mechanical solidarity, where everyone is more or less the same, then we can pretty easily see that there aren't going to be any chance meetings between diverse people because there are no diverse people. Everyone's the same. So that might help to explain the fact or the idea that it seems to have taken them quite a bit of time to develop harmony and polyphony. Compare this with our situation in the present day. We definitely don't have mechanical solidarity. We're more on the side of organic solidarity. People's labor is extremely specialized, and we're all pretty different people, even if you just think of your community or society in one city. People tend to be different, they tend to work all kinds of different jobs. This kind of society would have a much higher possibility for chance encounters and chance meeting between diverse people to happen. And that might be a contributing factor as to why music and the arts these days seem to have so much innovation. All in all, though, it's not to say that societies that have mechanical solidarity are incapable of innovation. It's just that they might do so slowly, or more slowly, because they're much less likely to encounter people with ideas that are different than theirs. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed my application of Durkheim's theory to this idea, and I'd really like to know what you thought about it, so please let me know in the comments. And if you have other perspectives, you agree with what I said, or maybe you disagree completely, please do let me know as well, because I am interested in hearing what you have to say. If you want to see more content like this, please take a moment to like the video, to subscribe, and also to hit that bell so you get notifications when I post more videos. My name's Gab Lavoie. Thank you once more for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. That felt good. I think that's it.